Hi, welcome to month 8 of the Stellar Stars block of the month. This month's block, this pretty little thing here, is called Grandma's Glitter. We're going to go back to basics with some of the elements that we will go over for making this block and getting it all put together. It is a variation of the traditional Grandma Star block, and I modified it with some elements of the Ohio Star, including the quarter square triangles, but we still have the quintessential intersecting blocks that run through the diagonal center, and they're in they're in two different colors just to give some contrast to the block. This block was my sample kind of before I figured out exactly what colors I wanted to go with. So the colors in the bundle that is for the subscription and the colors that are listed in the pattern are a bit more on the bluey turquoise side, where this is a bit more teal, but it's the same block. And in the video you will see me making the block using all of the colors here. The threads that are with the bundle this month are a mixture of aquas and turquoise to give some really pretty contrast and complements the bundle really nicely. So getting back to the block itself, let's talk about the different elements within the block. We have quarter square triangles, which you're all getting to be pros at by now, with along with a 4-patch in each of the corners and the center. They are different 4-patches as far as the colors that are used to make the 4-patch, but the construction will be the same. And while this block has elements that you've been learning and practicing and really getting good at, and a seemingly simple 4-patch, I felt it important to make the video because we have not done 4-patches yet. Although the Limelight block looks like it has 4 patches in the corners, the block construction isn't done in a 4-patch block. So the construction is a little bit different, although the finished look does look like a 4-patch. I want to go through with you how I make these, and learning that will just enhance all of your quilting. Anytime you need to make a 4-patch, a 9-patch, any block that you're just putting squares together, because it is important to trim them, and a lot of times people forget that trimming them to size before piecing them in makes a really big difference in the quality of your finished block. The supplies that you'll need this month are not too much different than what we've used in other months. I'm going to use glue basting with the microfine glue tip. We're going to cut those quarter square triangle units using the Fons Porter Half and quarter square triangle ruler. Of course, you'll need your rotary cutter and a rectangular ruler. This will be used for cutting the squares as well as trimming up those quarter square triangles. And everything leading into actually constructing the block is the same as previous months. We'll prepare our fabrics. Feel free to pre-wash if you've gotten those hand dyes. Sometimes it makes you feel a little bit better pre-washing those, just to prevent any bleeding at all. And starching the fabrics lightly once to twice on each side to stabilize those grain lines. It helps you make a cut much more easily. And once you have your fabric prepped, you'll be ready to cut up all of your pieces. The pattern this month, let me slip it on out of here, will look just like this. In Grandma's Glitter, we're going to be using 5 of the aquas to give some variation in the block itself, plus your background color. The 6th will be used for an Ohio Star, which is this month's accent block. So you'll notice that you'll need aqua 1 being the darkest, 2, 3, we're going to skip 4, and then 5 and 6, the 2 lightest. The aqua number 4 is used for the Ohio Star. Of course, you can vary this in any way that you like or prefer, but these are just my recommendations. And then the instructions will walk you through making the blocks step by step, which will make this video a really great supplement for you, just to reinforce skills, help you along the way with the visual part of how is it done, Are my seams going the right directions? What did she do? How can I do that? Those types of things that might come up as you are making. So let's jump right into cutting up our fabrics and getting them ready to sew into the Grandma's glitter block. I've gotten all my fabrics cut and ready to subcut into their smaller units to make the block. Before I cut the strips, I did starch all of my fabrics, and as I mentioned before, and hopefully you are starting to discover, it really helps quite a lot with stabilizing the grains, giving you really nice accurate cuts for your blocks. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the Aqua number 1, and you can follow along and use your own cutting instruction sheet for cutting each of the strips and then subcutting them into what you'll need for the block. So I'm going to start here with Aqua number 1, which is the darkest. This will get subcut into quarter square triangle units for the quarter square triangle blocks. I'm going to use the Fons Porter Half and quarter square ruler. We are going to align the strip, which is 2.5 inches, along the 2.5 inch strip line, which is written in black. And remember, if you'll remember back to previous videos, when you look at that number in the yellow circle on the strip measurement line, that is your finished quarter square triangle block size. So on this ruler, when it's facing this direction, you are going to be making the quarter square triangles. When it's this direction, it's the half square triangles. So on the quarter square triangle ruler, we want to make 4-inch finished, and that means 4.5 inches unfinished. And then that number over in the black, when you slide your finger on over, that means the strip width. So that's where we come up with that measurement, and I'm going to align my ruler right here on this strip, and we're going to cut this side and both diagonal sides to get our first unit, and we'll repeat that to get 4 units total. And to get the next unit, we just rotate it around. So sometimes when I'm doing the videos and I'm pre-cutting, I'm using scraps, and then if I accidentally am too short, I'll just cut it afterwards. So again, just rotate it around. Rotate this one. Yeah, I'm gonna have to cut an extra one. That's not a big deal. No worries. So you just keep cutting down your strip. In the instructions, I suggested that you cut a strip that is along the width of your fabric. That will definitely give you enough pieces. Where I was just working with scraps, and I was hoping it would fit, but apparently it didn't. That's okay though. So you cut your next one, and then repeat for Aquas 2 and 3, as well as for your white. So 2, 3, and white, and that will make your quarter square triangle for your block. And then the rest of the white and Aquas 5 and 6 we're going to cut up into squares. The 2 strips I have here are Aqua number 2 and 3. So 2 is the darker one, 3 is the slightly lighter one. And again, we need 4 quarter square triangles out of both of these. So I'm going to lie them on my mat and go ahead and cut the quarter square triangles out from there. After the first cut, I am going to separate these two, so there'll be 2 different piles. That way I can keep track of the colors. Right. I used the Fons Porter half and quarter square ruler to cut out all of the triangles I need for those quarter square triangle blocks. Next, we're going to go ahead and cut up our aqua 5 and 6 and the white, those 2.5-inch strips, to give us our 2.5-inch squares for the block. So I'm just going to use my regular old rectangular ruler and rotary cutter. This is a pretty simple cut to make, so I can actually go ahead and cut through 2 layers if I want to. If you're feeling really brave, you can cut through 3 layers, but I'll stick with 2 for now. And then I'm just going to line up that ruler. Remember in the past I've mentioned that I really like to line up the ruler on the edge of the fabric so that it aligns with a measurement that's not at the edge of the ruler. That just helps me make sure that it's straighter. Sometimes that edge of the ruler can hide where the end of the fabric actually is, so I like to pull it back just a little bit and align the ruler along that straight edge. I'll true up one edge of the fabric, flip it on around, and then start making my 2.5-inch cuts. Remember, we need 4 of each color, so we'll just make 4 cuts here. And this goes pretty easily, pretty quickly. I do separate them as I go just to keep my separate piles and I don't get them mixed up. I'll move those piles up here. And 2 more. And these will be put together in the center 4-patch as well as the 4 4-patch blocks that go on those outside corners of the block. And then this is scrap, scrap. And then I've got those ready to go. Next is the white. You'll cut as many strips as indicated in the pattern, and that will give you plenty to get 12 of those blocks. I'll just cut this up the same way. True up one end. And then just cut it to the end. Your strip will be longer. Remember, I did these from some scraps. And just keep moving on down. And you'll continue this until you get all 12 of your white squares. Next, we're ready to start assembling all of the parts and pieces to put together our quarter square triangle blocks, our 4-patch blocks, and then finally get that whole Grandma's Glitter block put together. Everything is cut and ready to assemble into our Grandma's Glitter block. We are going to start with the quarter square triangles. This is so much like what we've done before. It's just more practice, getting back to those basics, improving your skills, and really discovering how, by fine-tuning and practicing, because practice makes better. I don't believe that there's a perfect, but there certainly can always be a better and learning more. But by practicing, you're just going to improve and get better. So the first thing I like to do is lay out all of my pieces in the positions that they're going to go for the block. You can do this for the entire block, lay out all of the quarter square triangles and the 2.5-inch squares if you would like to. I'm going to go ahead and start with the quarter square triangles, and we will start by putting together 2 colors here and 2 colors here. The way I have them laid out is the snow is up top, which is the background. The darkest aqua number 1 is over here on my left, aqua number 2 on the right, and then at the bottom is number 3. If you want to switch them around, put different colors in those positions, feel free. This is how I have it laid out to distribute color throughout the block, but of course you can put in your own creative flair and mix it up if you would like to. But if you're following along with me here, that's how I have it laid out. So the first thing I'm going to join are aqua number 1 and the white. So basically what's on my left and what's on the top. And then I'm going to join the bottom and the right and make units out of those, and then those units will come together to make that quarter square triangle. I am going to glue base them. You all know me by now. If I can glue base it, I will, because it gives stability, it gives consistency, and I can be more efficient at the sewing machine. When I have these glue basted and I'm sewing, especially because these are a bias grain here, I won't get that pulling or the feed of my machine pulling on one side more than another, causing ripples or causing shifting. So give it a try if you haven't already. It makes a huge difference. So I'll put these over here to the side, and then I'm going to lay these out to prep them for glue basting. And you can glue baste multiples at a time if you would like. Usually when I'm working at my own space, I'll lay them all out and then glue baste them all. So I've got my Elmer's washable school glue with the microfine tip. I make and sell these, so they're available on my website. I'll provide the link in the description for you. So when I'm drawing the glue on, I start at the top of the triangle and I'm coming down to close to the bottom. I stop close to the bottom because I'm going to stop sewing at that 1/4 inch spot. So the glue is about 1/8 of an inch in. I'm going to stop sewing at about 1/4 inch, so it just lets that center part open up a little bit more easily. And a little bit goes a long way. You don't need much glue. And then I'll line up my edges of those cut pieces. That's why I like using that Fons Porter ruler, because I get consistent cuts and can place the colors wherever I would like. And then I can do those last two. And you don't have to be super straight or perfect with it. Just get it close to the edge. If you get it close to the 1/4 inch line, you'll might sew through it, but it won't be gummy. It won't bother your machine at all. But I do like putting it close to that inside edge. All right, next we have our aquas 2s and 3s that we're going to glue baste. You know, it seems, especially if you haven't done this yet, it might seem like it takes extra time. Why spend the time to glue baste it? But I'm talking and doing it, and when I'm not talking, it goes really fast, much faster than just like this. And I'm doing a video, so I want to take a little bit more time to show you the process. But when you're working on it at home, it will go quick. And the time you save at the machine with fussing, with how your pieces shift, or having to realign everything, you'll make up for that by leaps and bounds with glue basting. Then when I sew these together, I'm going to start at the top of the triangle to stabilize that space right up here, the top of the triangle, and I'm going to sew down to that 1/4 inch mark down here. So that way I can have that spot right here when I connect this unit with the previous unit, open up and spin in the middle. Okay, so these are all ready to sew. Again, when I go to sew, I'll start up here at the top of the triangle, come on down to that 1/4 inch or scant 1/4 inch. I am going to sew these with a scant 1/4 inch. Once the blocks are all sewn together, we will trim them up. All right, next preparation. While we're at it, we might as well prep our 4-patch blocks. So the 4-patch blocks I'm going to start with are the ones that go on the 4 corners. So we'll need 2 of them with aqua number 5, which is here, a little bit darker than aqua 6. So 2 for aqua 5, 2 for aqua 6, and then the snow on the outside will be on the 3 corners. So I will glue baste all of these together in units, and then they'll be ready to sew. I will also start and stop the sewing on these at that 1/4 inch spot. So I'll glue baste them in units just to keep what goes together. Sorry, you can't see the glue on the white, but I promise it's there. And then heat set those. Those are ready. Heat set, and those are ready. See, if you were to lay out everything on a table, or at least everything for both 4 patches that include this aqua number 6, it would go, it would be very efficient, more of an assembly line style, but since I'm doing the video, I'll break it down into smaller chunks. All right, last one. And now at the machine, when I go to sew, I can just chain stitch. Chain piecing, chain stitching, well, it's chain piecing. Chain stitch, that's an embroidery stitch. So when I chain piece, I won't have to worry about shifting or trying to realign anything at the machine, and it'll go really quickly for me. So now I've got those 1/4 square triangle units ready, those 4 patch, and I have my last 4 patch, which is the one that goes in the center. And this one has an aqua 5, aqua 6, and then it alternates aqua 5, sorry, aqua 6, aqua 5. So they're just alternating positions. And then do glue on those. And then everything is prepped and ready to sew. And again, on these, I will be stopping and starting at that 1/4 inch mark, or scant 1/4 inch mark. Just be consistent with your seam allowance of choice. So next, when we come on back in a second, we will press everything out and join our 4 patches and join our 1/4 square triangles. Everything is sewn. If you'll take a look, you can see how I started the top of the triangle and came on down and stopped at about that 1/4 inch spot on the 1/2 square triangle units, or sorry, 1/4 square triangle units. And on the 4 patch blocks, I started and stopped at the 1/4 inch for both ends. So that way this is opened up and will allow my seam intersections to nest and spin, twirl in that little pinwheel that alleviates so much bulk. It looks really nice, and it makes your quilts much easier to quilt. So to get started here, I'm going to set the seam. Setting the seam, if you'll remember, helps to prevent those ripples that can happen along the seam line, especially when you are joining 2 bias pieces together, 2 bias cuts, like we are here. So I am going to go ahead and set that seam. On this unit here, we're going to press it toward aqua number 3, so the lighter of the bunch. And this is all written into the pattern, so you'll know which direction to press it toward. So I'll just repeat that. So again, here's what I'm kind of doing, is setting my seam. Since I'm going to press toward the aqua number 3, I'm going to pull that over, and I'm actually pressing from the front. I prefer pressing from the front because it prevents the folds that can happen here along the seam line. If you've ever had that happen, more often than not it comes from pressing from the back, because it's really hard to get that to be flat when you're pressing like this. It's really hard to prevent a fold. But if you press from this side, you can use the edge of your iron. So let me set that seam again. So let me show you what I'm doing. So I'm taking my iron and I'm actually using the edge of it to catch that seam line and make sure I don't get any folds. Then on these, we are going to press toward the white. Now that seems a little backwards, so to speak, because so often we press toward the dark. But these are a quarter square triangle block, so the seams here will actually press, it'll have a seam pressed toward the white no matter which side we start on. So for this one, we're going to just start and go toward the white. And that will go right there. And I'm right-handed, so I tend to like to press with my right hand and then kind of fold it over with my left, rather than trying to go this way. It just seems a little awkward. I like to press toward the left. All right, these are ready to join into our quarter square triangle blocks, which will be just about like that. And I am going to glue base them to put them in the right position. So what we want is this seam intersection here. Now you can feel it. This seam is going to my left, and this seam now is going to the right. So when we put these two seams together, they will nest. So again, because it's a bias, and it just helps so much, I am going to glue baste along that edge. And then starting from the center of the block out, that is really important. Don't start at your corners. Those will probably be trimmed up, but we want that center intersection to match. So starting right there, and you can see it really nicely. See how those nest, and it's nice and flat. And then align those cut edges. And then, but don't stretch it. This is a bias. It's going to be really easy to get it kind of stretchy, but try to prevent stretching it. And then when it pieces together, look how nice that intersection will look. So we'll repeat that for all four. And then when we sew it, you just sew straight down from one end to the other. All right, let's do the next one. Again, just place your glue right along that edge. Nest those seams. Take a look at it if you need to. Just make sure that it's nested and flat. You can feel it with your fingers as well. And then without stretching, just heat set. So I'm setting the iron right on top and letting the heat go through. All right, then the last two. The other benefit to doing this instead of pins is at that intersection where you would be tempted or might normally put a pin, because it's glue basted, it's not going to shift even the slightest bit. With a pin, you can still get shifting, and you've got to take the pin out, and the pin will go up and down, so it will kind of shift the fabric over as well. Okay, last one. And nest that little guy. All right, and these are ready to sew. All right, now our 4 patch blocks. We're going to do pretty much the same kind of thing. Set the seam, and then we are going to press on these toward the aqua. Set the seam, and this one will get pressed just in the opposite direction. Really, it doesn't matter, because we'll be able to rotate this around because it's the same. So those are ready. Again, we'll set the seam, press toward the aqua. And again, practice pressing from the front. See how that works for you. And in the instructions for the pattern, the directions are given for which way the seam needs to be pressed. So in this one, the first one I'm going to press toward the light aqua, and actually the next one I will too. Because look what happens. So I press the same direction on both. This piece will actually get flipped around and fit in like that. So it's not really going the same direction because now you can see they are going opposite directions. So when I glue base these two together, the seams will nest and they will spin in that center as well. So I'll nest those so you can see that again. Align those edges and heat set it, and that's ready to sew. You don't have to stop and start at the 1/4 inch here because really on the block it doesn't have a seam intersection here, so you can just go straight on through on those ends if you want to. All right, let's do those other 4 patch blocks. Same thing here. Just make sure the seams nest and that they're going the opposite direction. And heat set, and it's ready to go. All right, so everything is prepped again and ready to sew. We have all of the 4 patch blocks ready to sew, so there should be 5 total, the center one and then the 4 that go on the outside corners. And we have all of our 1/4 square triangles prepped and ready to sew. Let's go over again how we're going to sew these. Both sets, you can just sew straight from end to end. You don't need to stop or start or worry about anything at the intersection. Just go straight on through. And the same on these, you can go straight on through because the seam here doesn't intersect with any other seams, so you don't have to worry about needing to spin the seam that's here or here. The same for this one, but when you're joining those, you can, as you get better, you'll discover and which end you don't have to stop or start at. But for this, it's just simpler just to do it on both ends for instruction wise. So next up, we will have these sewn and then we'll trim them up.